Joining us today, we have a special guest. He's a radio host, lecturer, and author, and one of the most prominent Jewish thinkers in America. Dennis Prager is with us. He's the author of the new book, Still the Best Hope, Why the World Needs American Values to Triumph. Dennis, thank you so much for coming into the studio and joining us today.
Great to be with you, thanks.
Why don't we start with sort of the 101 level, which is the American Trinity. This is what you start out with, the three sort of fundamental ideas that make up the American value system. Describe those for us, so we know the context of where we're going.
I can do this. Here it is. There are three competing, I would even say, religions in the world for humanity's allegiance. Leftism, Islamism, and Americanism. Leftists proselytize for the left, Islamists proselytize for Islam, and nobody proselytizes for the American value system.
Right.
The reason is that few people know it, including conservatives. Conservatives know a value here and there, and we, not they, I'm a member of them, articulate them well, but not the system. If you took a conservative and said, give me, what is the American value system? You would get a speech, but not an answer. And we have to give an answer. People know what everything stands for except the distinct American value system. And it is what I call the American Trinity: liberty, in God we trust, e pluribus unum. No other country has those three. We have them on every coin.
Yeah, and what I found interesting was that I'm probably like you describe. Tell us what's interesting to America, or what's valuable to America. What's the value system? I can give a pretty good talk about that, and I can argue about it. I can do a day's worth of Facebook comments back and forth about it. But what was interesting reading your book was how clearly and sanely and simply you were able to describe them, and then how I thought clearly you were able to say, well, the leftist religion, as you call it, and really sort of nail the attributes of that religion.
That's what took so long. It took me 12 years from my last book to this book because of that. To get the clarity, and then to explain why one is superior to the other and how they're in conflict. Leftism and Americanism are in conflict.
Absolutely, and I want to get into that. But one of the things that's interesting, that I found interesting, was that you attribute a certain emotionalism to the left, that they're interested in emotions, good intentions, feelings,
it's a feelings-based religion.
And that is part of its appeal to youth. Is that part of your journey as well? Is that something that when you look to yourself and your trip through political philosophy and what you believe?
Well, my trip was really not from the left. I still think I'm a liberal, but I'm perfectly happy to be called a conservative, and I am. But conservatism and the liberalism I grew up with are virtually identical. But liberalism has been taken over the term by the left. And here's a simple little proof, as I put in the book. The New York Times calls The Nation magazine liberal. But if The Nation is liberal, what's left? Literally, what is left?
Yeah.
And you'd have to say Pravda, or at least Pravda under the Soviets, because there is no left of The Nation.
Right.
But the New York Times editorial page and The Nation are identical. So it's no longer a liberal page at the New York Times. It's a left-wing page.
Yeah, well, that distinction between leftist and liberal, I think, has been totally lost over the because to argue for liberty is essentially a conservative value.
Well, it is.
And then the leftist establishment is some of the most illiberal, sort of sometimes almost fascistic in terms of their mindset and the locked.
As I put it in the book, the left has totalitarian DNA. They just tried to ban bake sales in Massachusetts.
We just talked about that earlier today on the show.
Well, there you go. But that's part of it. The taking of 6-year-olds and arresting them for sexual harassment. I had on my show 7th graders from Oregon on my show. My listeners raised funds for them. That's in my book too, the whole story. On Slap Butt Day at some elementary school, these kids slapped the butt of girls. They were strip searched by police 4 times.
Yeah. And I want to go back to what I was talking about in terms of its appeal to youth, and the emotion, the emotionalism, the feeling, because there is a feeling like when I work in the entertainment industry, so I'm surrounded by
feelings.
Feelings, because that's what they deal in, but also highly liberal people, politically left people, let's say that, to distinguish. And I enjoy the gamesmanship. I enjoy getting into it and having those discussions. But there is this feeling that you experience of that if I'm a left person, if you disagree with me, I hate you. If you don't give me what I want, you hate me. And it always has this highly toxic feeling underneath that is kind of surprising to me always. And you talked about it in your book, this idea that sometimes there's a more reasoned, less emotional, there's actually more tolerance on the right.
It's a feelings-based, leftism is feelings-based. They hold that they're intellectual, but it's feelings-based. And I'll give one everyday example. I've never heard a conservative spokesman say, I'm offended. Liberals, whether spokesmen or lay people, constantly are offended. And when are they offended? If you differ with them. So if you say, for example, well, most abortions, the truth is most abortions are not terribly moral acts. Just saying that, I've tried it. I'm offended. That's offensive to women. But no pro-life woman goes, that's offensive when she hears pro-choice. She said, that's wrong, that's immoral, that's whatever. But it doesn't offend because it's feelings-based leftism. In every arena, they feel for the person who murdered. Therefore, he shouldn't be executed.
Well, but also you talk about the policies, often disastrous, that arise from wanting to do good, because part of what you do really well is to not castigate those individuals who subscribed to leftist philosophy, because generally it is based on wanting to do good, seeing an injustice, seeing perhaps an inequality that they want to redress, but the policies that emerge from it are disastrous, and they seem to have a blind spot about it.
Well, first of all, you actually seem to have read a good part of it, if not all of it, and I'm very touched. But that's exactly right. And one of the great lessons of life that I have learned from leftism is that intentions don't mean a damn. And the most evil, this is an unbelievable rule of the 20th century, the vast majority of evil in the genocidal century of the 20th century was brought about by doctrines based on good intentions.
And this is the Soviet,
China,
Soviet
the entire Marxist experiment.
But what you made clear is that a lot of people voted or participated, or as you said, cried at Stalin's funeral, who were not people who wanted to send millions of people to the Gulag.
That's right.
And so there's an appeal there to it. I mean, look, factually, one of my questions is, why is there so much success in the left, for the left in America? And it appears that you and I could probably go for a couple hours here having a lovely chat, but it feels as though it's under siege, doesn't it? And why do we feel that
America is
the
under
American
siege?
Trinity,
of course it is. Liberty is under siege by egalitarianism. The left prefers equality to liberty. You will have X number of women on your corporate board, or you will be fined. That's in Norway, for example, and they want to adopt it here. So that's, in other words, you don't have the liberty to choose who's on your board. We will tell you we want sexual egalitarianism. In God We Trust is under siege by radical secularism, and E Pluribus Unum is under siege by multiculturalism.
Now, in terms of, I want to bring up a topic that's obviously hot the week that we're recording this, which is that of gay marriage. The president came out somewhat under duress because his vice president kind of forced the issue. As the president himself said, he was over his skis in sort of saying that he was okay with gay marriage. But let's talk about the issue, because you mentioned that people who have conservative values or believe in the American Trinity are often ascribed really hateful motives and hateful belief systems, that you are anti-gay, anti-woman, anti-this, anti-that, hate. And how does a conservative America, how can you either posit either for or against gay marriage without having it linked to the bigotry against homosexuals?
Well, we have to do that. The one obvious way is that we welcome gays into the conservative movement. Conservative gays call my show every single time I discuss gays, every single time. Today was another example on my particular show, my radio show, and but it doesn't matter. The gay left, just like the black left, the Jewish left, the American left generally, the Hispanic left, you name it, their agenda is to smear us. I have a huge chapter on this, from Barry Goldwater being declared by over 2,000 psychiatrists to be mentally ill. Every one of those psychiatrists should have been removed from psychiatry. What they did violated the basic moral tenets of their profession. To declare a diagnosis of someone they have never treated, and then to say it openly. But it doesn't matter. if you don't agree with same-sex marriage, you're anti-gay. If you don't agree with affirmative action, you're anti-black. If you don't agree with abortion, you're anti-woman. And that's how they get us.
Let's talk a little bit about the university system and how the university system propagates a certain kind of thinking that, you allude to the Duke rape case, for instance, where before any piece of evidence was in, and the evidence obviously showed what it showed, university professors, to a large degree, large percentage, had signed on to the indictment of these kids who ended up being proven innocent. So talk to us about the university system and what place it holds in terms of this.
Here it's quite simple. There are Christian seminaries, Jewish seminaries, and leftist seminaries. The leftist seminary is the university. And I don't mind it. I mind that they deny it. I hate the intellectual dishonesty. I have no problem with universities declaring it is our hope that your son or daughter will leave our university a committed leftist. I have no issue with that. I have an issue with their going under the guise of we're trying to open minds.
Liberal arts education.
Yes, that's right.
Which would seem to be a freeing of the mind, and yet oftentimes it is actually the closing of the mind, as you quote Dr. Bloom. I want to talk also about the Jewish value system, because a lot of leftists often take positions against that of Israel, and yet vote leftist. There's a
Jewish leftist.
Jewish leftist.
Yeah.
There seems to be a real sort of confused.
I can explain that in one sentence, actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
They are Jewish in ethnicity. Their Judaism is ethnic. Their religion is leftism. Judaism is their ethnicity. Leftism is their religion. That's true, by the way.
And is that why? And so that would explain why Jews largely vote Democratic, even though in recent years Republicans have been a greater friend to Israel.
But it doesn't matter. A lot of Jews, first of all, a lot of Jews don't care about Israel, certainly, and those Jews will more likely be on the left, obviously. Even those Jews on the left who care about Israel will take positions or will help those who are not friendly to Israel. They're not fighting the anti-Jewish anti-Israel hate at the University of California, Irvine, or at other universities with their toxic anti-Israel propaganda in course of whole weeks devoted to that. They don't. It's all coming from the left. Best friend of Israel is the Wall Street Journal editorial page in terms of national newspapers, right? Not the New York Times.
Yeah.
Yet the average Jew, what was it? The Supreme Court Justice Kagan. She said, when I grew up, the New York Times was our Bible.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is for left-wing Jews and left-wing non-Jews.
I want to talk about China, which is, if you read Thomas Friedman or other intellectuals, they look to China as sort of the ultimate, the next evolution of what a nation state should be. They're so efficient over there. They have great airports. They always, I go crazy with Friedman and the Chinese airports. I mean, they can relocate 10,000 people overnight without any property rights and build a swell airport. Yep. But talk to us about this sort of mythologizing and romanticizing of China, which at the same time has the most horrific human rights record.
Well, it is astonishing, isn't it? Look, first of all, Tom Friedman, bless his soul, gets almost everything wrong. It's really, no, it's eerie almost. I read him almost to see a pitcher who not only doesn't throw no-hitters, but is just knocked out in the third inning. And yet he is idolized, and the Arab Spring, his optimism. When he was writing about how excited he was at Tahrir Square, I wrote my syndicated column, not read as much, but read, and I wrote 8 reasons to fear what is happening in Egypt.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a spring. But you see, the mindset, look, the left, Richard Falk at Princeton wrote a big op-ed welcoming Khomeini.
Yeah.
Because if the Shah is pro-America, he must be awful. Khomeini anti-America must be terrific.
Right. And the ones who are doing awful things in China are corporations like Apple, who don't run their factories as well as the left would like them run, or their they say their human rights abuse is happening at an American factory in China, but there's no mention of let's start with the 50 to 60 million dead since the Cultural Revolution.
Well, right. Who learns that? How many graduates of Harvard, in history, forget in physics?
I'm the one. No, I'm just kidding.
All right. Know how many Mao killed?
Yeah. But I was like this weird guy who studied Soviet history and
So did I. That's
Soviet
what I studied.
history and relations, and you had pipes, and you had these certain
Yes, our heroes.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
You know, you're obviously a defender of America's dominant role in foreign policy and world policy and making the world a better place.
Not because I'm an American, because I care about human suffering. That's the key here. If America is strong, there's less suffering on Earth.
Well, how do you explain it to the? For instance, Ron Paul has a very devoted following. He's also a complete isolationist. He wouldn't have America
That's correct.
doing anything.
He is indistinguishable from the far left in terms of foreign policy.
And so, what do you say to those? I mean, in terms of, because a lot of your book, you talk about world opinion of America matches exactly left opinion of America, which is that America does more damage than it does good, and that Bush and Thatcher are the most hated people in the world, right under Hitler. The Bush and Thatcher. So how do you deal with the idea of world opinion and left opinion, and trying to counter that with what you've got, the American Trinity and America's value in the world? As
the only way to counter the quote-unquote world opinion, left-wing opinion, is getting our ideas to more people. That is why talk radio. I'm here to really promote my book, but the truth is, talk radio, for example, has negated this, and that's why we're hated in talk radio so much. They understand that if there was no talk radio, the fairness doctrine that they've wanted to promulgate and so on to shut us up, they've understood that if this existed in Europe, Europe would be a different continent if there were talk radio in Europe like there is in the US. If there were pajamas TV, if there were books like this, if there were newspapers like the Wall Street Journal editorial page and so on. They have, I don't blame the European for thinking Israel and America are two of the worst countries in the world. That's what they're told every day. How could they not think that? It would be telling them it's not so, telling them that two of the finest countries in the world is like telling them the earth is flat.
Yeah. All right, well, you know, we could go on for minutes and minutes and hours, but we'll wrap it right there. Dennis, such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio. Make sure to pick up his new book. I have it right here in a hardcover, but I also have it on my download because I'm weird and I buy both, the hardcover and the download.
Bless you.
Still the Best Hope, Why the World Needs American Values to Triumph. For PJTV, I'm Alan Barton.